Honorable Chairman of Singapore Institute of International Affairs, my dear old friend, Professor Simon Tay, distinguished guests, friends and colleagues, old friends, new friends, good morning, and thank you for inviting me to share Indonesia's perspective and experiences on sustainable development. You're right, Simon, the light in front of us is quite bright. So I may have to speak slower. Or wear sunglasses. Thank you, Pak Gurmit. It is a great pleasure to be here and be part of an interesting dialogue on such a topic that is, in a way, is an issue of survival of human and other living species for many years to come. In preparing this remark on sustainable development and challenges that Indonesia is facing, particularly I will zooming at the landscape and ecosystem level, I turn over pages of good and bad memories on Indonesia's journeys from the old paradigm of trickle-down economic development into what President Yudhoyono called as sustainable development with equity, a development pathway that is not contradicting economic development with environment, nor also exacerbating injustice in sustainable management of natural resources. Ladies and gentlemen, let me start with the issue of equity. Development is intended to bring growth in income and increasing prosperity for a country. But in many cases, economic development failed to increase prosperity for all. Some large or small percentages of population are left behind, unable neither to catch up nor to benefit from development. Disparity keeps tagging along the classic economic development that assume a trickle-down effect. Countries that have gone through significant economic growth trend experiences an increased Gini ratio or Gini coefficient, such as China that already reached 47.4 by 2012, or Brazil, 51.9 by 2012. Indonesia itself has increased the Gini ratio from around 38 in 2009 to about 41 in the last few years. The economic growth of our rich and middle income people was faster or bigger than those of the low-income group in our society. Acknowledging that the percentage of the poor is still significant, our government developed a pro-poor affirmative action that would give direct assistance to the poor, including the Credit Untuk Rakyat, credit facility without collaterals for poor communities, cash transfer or rice for the poor. Just to illustrate what we have done, a total of 11, not one, 11 billion US dollar, billion, not million, was committed and disbursed for non-collateral credit facility from 2007 up to April 2014 this year. The total number of recipients of our CUR program is 10 million people with an average credit of $1,000 per person. Only a few of those 10 million people were able to increase their level of absorptions up to 15,000 credit line facility. The cash transfer and rice for the poor programs have also delivered emergency relief support in economic hardship situation, either after natural disaster incidents or when we had reductions of gasoline price subsidy. However, those affirmative programs are too slow to alleviate poverty, mainly because of constraint in our fiscal space, limited entrepreneurial skills, and low productivity of our workforce. Therefore, while our economy is continuing to grow about 5% in the last decade, poverty alleviation is still at the heart of our development priority. As a big developing country that is also the world's third largest democracy, as you probably monitor the election process in Jakarta in the last few days, Indonesia is also facing similar challenges that is facing by China, India, South Africa, Brazil, and other developing countries. Aside from economic injustice, environmental degradation is another source of inequity, since the burden of pollution, flood, landslides, or drought is imposed to the local community, while the profit and benefit of certain economic activities are shared among company shareholders and a wide range of stakeholders. Indonesia believes that a sustainable development would not be sustained without equity. A fast growing economy would be an incessant trend if not seriously considering the limits to growth, especially the carrying capacity of Mother Nature. An integrated and systematic approach to development is needed to ensure that inclusivity of growth and prosperity is applied into every and each members of the society. In this context, incorporating and managing the underlying causes and impacts of development that rooted from social, economic, and political aspects are important as the development itself. There is a need to create a framework where good governance can address those multi-aspect challenges. Ladies and gentlemen, the other challenge that we face is the limited ability of our bureaucracy, which was caused by fragmented authority and bad governance. This problem is found in many countries, but influences most of our actions to improve the management of our landscapes. Take the issue of forest degradation and deforestation, for example. Most of the fragmented authorities to manage landscape emerge over time from the splitting of tasks, splitting of authorities based on project activities, sectors, or administrative boundaries. Every year we have new districts being created by splitting existing districts. Control over spatial plans, land use conversion, and new priority projects is shared, is distributed, is fragmented among 3 to 4 central government agencies and many local government authorities. Such division is limiting each of the fragmented authorities to work on finding long-term solution. They would only able to create partial solution to the problem related to their limited scope of responsibilities. The forestry sector can only deal with issue within the forest land boundaries, although the drivers of deforestation most of the time are outside the forest lands. Managing landscapes requires every sector that influences the land management to be involved in the decision-making. Such cross-sector coordination is easier said than done. In most of the cases, the problem could only be detected after it had happened through the monitoring of social, economic, and environmental degradations. Actions are taken mainly to react on the worsening situation when actually it should be taken care of while the problem was still small and at the early stage. In addition to the problem created by the fragmented authorities are the type of land management and land use permits. The incentive for small and medium enterprises are also limited, and the interconnectivity, the partnership between big companies and small and medium enterprises are not greatly encouraged. This could create a problem in the future because half of the companies in Indonesia are medium and small holders. About 43% or approximately 4 million hectares of the total 9 million hectares of palm oil plantations are owned and operated by small and medium smallholders. Ladies and gentlemen, one major problem that led to unsustainable development was the perception that landscape is constraint or limitation in doing business rather than opportunity. We should revisit that vision and work out the definition of landscape itself. An improved definition of landscape would help us in identifying the drivers of sustainable development. We need to identify the opportunities while learning about the boundaries or limitations of landscape management. If we treat the ecology, economics, and social concepts in an integrated manner like a landscape approach, then we could identify economic potentials that reduce poverty while preventing environmental degradation. It will not be easy, but with a clearer definition of where we would like to go, the shareholder, the stakeholders can build the vehicle to get to our final destination. Ladies and gentlemen, President Yudhoyono's mantra on sustainable development with equity is pro-growth, pro-jobs, pro-poor, and pro-environment. It is a development that based on opportunities and inclusivity. Policies such as moratorium of new licenses of primary forest and peatland, and the establishment of our REDD agency, which later in the day we have the head of the REDD agency going to inform you more, is part of a strategic effort to reach the goal. 2014 is the year of politics in Indonesia. Actually, aside from the excitement of watching the maneuvering of political parties, this is also the best time to create a breakthrough on government structure that allow equity issues receive a higher priority in managing economic development. Addressing the equity issue means defragmenting the messy authorities. What do I mean by defragmenting authorities, and what kind of affirmative actions that can be executed by such consolidated authorities? Let me start with the first word. Defragmenting authorities cannot be done only by consolidating and coordinating between existing authorities. Shifting the mindset from project activities to holistic program to landscape approach is as important as improving sector coordination. We need governance structure that has the authority to take decision in all aspects of the landscape problems. We need to divide authorities based on the landscape definition rather than administrative units of activities or projects. The authorities need to have sufficient capacity and capability to create policies and instruments that would reward best practices and punish the bad ones. Now, the second what I have been asked is already been touched briefly in the beginning. How can we incentivize small and medium enterprise to increase productivity by encouraging connectivity, partnerships with big companies? Currently, effort to increase connectivity between the smallholders and large plantations were not significant. In consolidating authorities of each landscape, the partnership will deliver various changes within that landscape boundary. On the final side, we need an authority that can execute affirmative actions by creating sufficient allocation for poverty alleviation initiatives, and also ensure that the community can be included in managing the land that they need. When successful, this financial support will significantly reduce the incidence of horizontal conflicts between large and small, as well as within local communities. I come to my last 2 pages. Ladies and gentlemen, the mid-2013 fires last year, most noticeable in June, had extensive coverage because the satellite data showed over 800 hotspots of peatland were burned in Riau, Sumatra. It grabbed the world attention on how serious the impacts, particularly on the spreading of hazardous haze to Malaysia and Singapore, and it has been said that the pollution index was the worst in 16 years. Indonesia government had reacted immediately. Not only we enforce existing regulations and encourage local institutions to step up efforts in preventing and controlling forest and land fires, but we also add the fire brigade capacity by assigning 8 Hercules airplanes and a few thousand military personnel to put off the enraged hotspots, while at the same time attempting to harvest rains. Hotspots have decreased in less than 2 weeks, though it did not eliminate them completely. Unfortunately, fires occurs every year. Focusing only on hotspots and combating them separately have failed to prevent future fires and future haze problems that in some provinces becoming a regular event every quarter or every semester. In this first quarter of this year, the first quarter of this year, a similar fire and haze incident recurring, which has prompted President Yudhoyono to interrupt his field visit in East and Central Java and organizing emergency actions to combat fires. The President went to Riau, directly led the joint forces of military and civilian personnel to put off the fire. While the skills to harvest rains have improved significantly, we are now good at harvesting rains. The management and the systems to prevent recurring fires and haze incidents require consolidation of authorities on the ground in Riau, in Jambi, North and South Sumatra, West, East, and Central Kalimantan, and also among agencies in Jakarta across the board. This type of defragmentation effort will need time and consistent political support. El Nino, I was told, will come in 2 months' time. They are coming to welcome our new president. Ladies and gentlemen, there is no silver bullet policy nor magical instrument to prevent fires and haze, neither in implementing sustainable resource management. Maintenance of good governance and improved implementation of sustainable development require active participation of private sector and non-governmental entities. Our state budget currently is about $150 billion, which is less than 10% of our economic size that was reported about $2 trillion. As the 10th largest economy of the world, the ability of government spending to shape sustainable development is actually pale compared to what is being raised and spent by the private sector and the society at large. To move our economy toward green economy, the private sector is actually functioning as the engine of growth. While government can set the goal of sustainable development with equity and provide incentive for good behavior with standards, with procedures, with regulations, putting hundreds of perpetrators into jail if they are setting off fire, and brought to court a dozen rogue companies, the private sectors need to continue fueling economy with skills and resources that will unlock the potential of our natural landscapes and the people who live in it. If we come back to the issue of fire and haze, the role of forestry and agriculture industries, as well as the traders, the bankers, consumer good manufacturers, are vital to alleviate poverty in fire-prone areas so that there won't be temptation to open more forests or open more peatlands and use fires to create plantations. Projects and actions taken should be ensured to carry out sustainable practices from cradle to grave. I just would like to close with an invitation to each and every one of you in the room to take this long but not impossible journey to create a sustainable development for all. A sustainable development with equity that will deliver a better, healthier, and friendlier future. I thank you.